Hello, gamers from around the world. This is Boxenberger, the video game enthusiast from Germany, and I would like to welcome you to today's episode of The World of Gaming, your number one podcast, where we discuss everything that the world of gaming has to offer, games, news, and technology. And I already see that the live chat is filling up with a lot of familiar faces. Welcome to you guys. But of course, I also want to welcome today's guest, Randall Thor, the man with the million, host of the Xbox 2 podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Boxenberger. It's going to be an interesting show because, me and you, we've tried to hook up before to do podcasts, but always something, whether it's, my schedule or your schedule, just wouldn't work together. But finally, I was free. You needed a guest for the show, and here we are.
And here we are, and I'm really glad to have you on. It's going to be a fun show. We have so much topics to cover here today. We will talk, of course, about Max Payne and the remakes that Max Payne returns. Super excited about that. We had a lot of news about Unreal Engine, and a new Tomb Raider game was announced. The Coalition has shown a great-looking tech demo. We will talk about some of the Gamepass games for the rest of the year. And there was earlier today an interesting survey published that we are going to talk about who wants to join Game Pass and who not. And it's very interesting. And we have a couple of other stuff. So let's do that. But first, I want to have do a little housekeeping. You guys know that this show is live here on YouTube, but it's also available on the podcast services around the globe. And if you do listen audio only, first of all, thank you and welcome to the show. But it would be awesome if you could hit that 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. That really helps these small podcasts out here. But with that out of the way, I definitely want to talk with Randall Thor about the games that we are playing. All right. Let's talk about the games of the week. There have been a couple of releases actually since we had the last show last Thursday. Weird West came out. The Lego Star Wars Skywalker Saga came out. MLB The Show was released. A new Sherlock Holmes game came out on the Switch. And we had the House of the Dead remake. Have you been playing any of these games?
No, but I actually do own. Let's see, I own Weird West. I own MLB The Show, and I think one of the other ones. No, I haven't played any of them yet. The last game I really kind of went through was, I think, the game that you're currently playing.
Yeah.
Elden Ring.
And that is Elden Ring. Yeah. I just finished that earlier today, this afternoon. I finally beat that Elden boss or whatever.
So it was called. I remember when you posted on Twitter.
Yeah.
When everybody was going crazy about the game, you were like, I don't know if this game is for me, because I'm not sure. Because I think you said you had never really played any other Souls-like games, right?
Oh,
especially from software. Oh, you have? Okay.
Played, but I haven't played them in a long time. Ever since I became a father, I just have less game time, and I lost the patience that you need for those games. So when Dark Souls 3 came out, I bought it. But honestly, I played 5-6 hours, and I just couldn't get into it anymore. But yeah, Dark Souls 1 and Demon Souls and those kind of games back in the days, I played them. Yeah.
So how did you feel Elden Ring compared to those games?
Oh, definitely a step up. I love the open world. I think that's the star of the game. The open world really invites you to explore, and I before I started Elden Ring, I played Horizon Forbidden West, and I really enjoyed that game. But you have these question marks all over the map, and you know exactly where to go, and there's a lot of hand holding. And I enjoyed that. But Elden Ring did this very differently. But there were also a couple of things I didn't enjoy that much. It's minor convenience things that I miss, like the pause button.
Yeah.
Or that you can't compare the stats of your items in your inventory properly. Yeah, you always have to kind of either I took screenshots with my phone, and then I was able to compare the stats and stuff like that. And at the end I felt it got a little grindy because once you go into the end game phase, and my skills are probably not as good as yours because I heard you only died like 12 times playing the game.
No. I died at least 12 times to Melina, let
Okay.
alone the whole game. I mean, yeah. No, I died
Okay,
quite. I still died quite a bit, you know. So.
Okay. Yeah, but so the last three bosses, they really gave me a hard time. So I kind of started to grind in the game, and yeah. But overall, it was a fun game. It's probably not the big masterpiece that everyone makes it out.
I mean, it's not in the '97 meta game of the year.
But it's still a great game. I really enjoyed it. I put like 84, 85 hours into it now. I wouldn't do that if I didn't enjoy the game. So. What did you think about it?
I mean, I loved it, but yeah, I still there's still some issues I do have with the game. Like you mentioned, the open world aspect is probably the game's biggest strengths, but also is the cause for its biggest weaknesses. Mainly like some of the areas are repeated. Like when you first time you go into a catacomb or mine, it's really cool, but then you realize every time you go into another catacomb or another mine, it's just the same. It's like it looks exactly the same. The layout's just a little different, right? And you may not necessarily notice that right away. But another thing that really bothered me towards the end was all the repeated bosses. Like, okay, you fight one boss, and then like later on you'd fight that boss, you know, with somebody else. They doubled up on a lot of bosses. There weren't as many unique bosses that I would like. And I sort of felt like the From Software game design didn't really lend itself to an extremely long game like this was. Because I don't know if you felt the same, but I felt the game peaked in the capital city. Yeah. And then once you moved into the areas beyond, it sort of was nowhere near as good as it had been. Like everything leading up to the capital city was tremendous, right? Yeah. And then, but once you went out from there, like I felt the game went down a couple notches and it wasn't nearly as enjoyable anymore.
Became way more linear also in these later areas. And then in the beginning of the game, simply exploring the world really leveled you up and you discovered a lot of items you could use and try out different play styles and everything. But I felt that this went away the further you progressed in the game, because then you had your build ready. And when I for instance, had that Moonwhale katana and I already leveled it up to level 6 or 7. And then I didn't feel like changing my weapon out anymore. And so exploring a dungeon, it became less rewarding because you got some runes, but that's about it. Most of the items you find in the later game didn't fit my build, so I couldn't use them. And so I thought it just became a little less rewarding, probably around after the capital city that you mentioned. I agree there.
So the game that you're showing on screen here is Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. Now,
exactly. I started this week.
I've been thinking about playing it. So how are you feeling about it?
Okay, I'm now like 4 or 5 hours into the game, so still early. Do you like the Borderlands games?
I mean, I do. I mean, I really like Borderlands 1 and 2. 3 I thought was good, but not great. And I wasn't that excited for this game. Mainly because, like, it's been a while since I played the Tiny Tina's DLC from Borderlands 2, so it's like, okay. And Borderlands 3 did just come out a couple years ago, so I was kind of like, I already had my Borderlands fix. So I wasn't really sure if I really wanted to do another one of these looter shooters, right? You know, because I enjoy them from time to time, but, I mean... Well, you played it. Are you enjoying it? Is it worth playing right now?
I do enjoy it. I felt similar like you. I like Borderlands. I didn't think it was as good as the first two. And also the pre-sequel. I also liked the pre-sequel a lot, to be honest. But yeah, this one is really fun so far. Of course, it's a Borderland game, but they do some things differently than in the main Borderland games, like what you're seeing right now here. You have this overworld that is really designed like a tabletop game, and that's that's really a unique thing, because what you can't see here right now is the voice of Tiny Tina. She is the master of that tabletop game, and then she just randomly changes those things in this overworld. And you also get different abilities that you don't have in the main Borderland games. Like you have mainly two special abilities. You can choose which one, and one is a magic ability, and the other one is more like a super powerful melee ability. And then you can level those up separately. So I kind of feel like the RPG system is a little deeper than in the main Borderland game. So yeah, so far I'm enjoying it. It is that the humor is a little juvenile, but it's still enjoyable. So so far I enjoy it, and I'm looking forward to continue it over the weekend. Definitely.
That's cool. I might have to check it out. There's so many games that are out, and I have so many games in my backlog. It's kind of just overwhelming sometimes.
It is.
You know.
It is. What's your next game you're gonna play?
Well, so I was thinking about playing Tiny Tina's.
Yeah.
I also want to play Horizon Forbidden West as well, because I bought that. I haven't played it yet. And, I even bought Grand Theft Auto 5 for the Xbox Series X and S. I played it back on, the Xbox 360 in September of 2013.
Yeah.
And I loved the single player. And then I never played it again after I finished it. So I didn't play it on the Xbox One. So I had like a $25 gift card on my account when it was like, oh, you can get this for $20. I was like, okay, it doesn't cost me anything. Sure, no problem. And because I've been thinking like, maybe I want to go through the campaign again. It's been 9 years. I'm not. Yeah. I probably don't remember that much of it, but there's just so much. I also haven't finished like Guardians of the Galaxy. It was probably, if I had to pick like the next game I'm gonna go through, is probably finish up Guardians. Nice. And I'm trying to think of like upcoming releases. Yeah. I also want to play Tunic as well. There's a lot of games.
Yeah, I have downloaded Tunic, but I didn't start it because I can't play two of those challenging games at the same time.
Well, Tunic lets you actually turn off stamina, and you can toggle invincibility. Oh. So if you don't want to screw around with the how hard the game is or any of the mechanics, you can just walk around being invincible. And I'm trying to think like the big games, like you mentioned Lego Skywalker.
Yeah.
There would have been a point in time I would have played that, but I got completely burnt out on Lego games. Like I used to play them all when I was back in my gamer score days. Like I would play every single one of them, whether it's like Jurassic Park or Lego Indiana Jones or the Star Wars games or the Hobbit games or whatever.
Harry Potter. And,
but they were all basically so similar that eventually it was kind of just, I don't know, it wasn't really enjoyable anymore. So, and I know I played through the first, I think I played the first like 6 Lego games for Star Wars. I think the only thing new is the new trilogy, right? So it's just kind of like, I don't know if I really want to play all that, but I know they've made a lot of like changes to it, aesthetically and like combat and stuff. But I don't know.
Similar like you, because I probably didn't play all of them, but the Lego games were these couch co-op games I played with my buddy. We did that almost every weekend. We ordered pizza and played a couch co-op game, and ever so often it was the Lego games because they were fantastic couch co-op games. But then I didn't play a Lego game in the entire Xbox One generation. So yeah, I was thinking about playing one again and just see if I still enjoy them. So yeah, maybe after Tiny Tina. We will see. All right. Listen, before we talk about the news, I want to briefly catch up on some of the super chats. The first one is actually a super sticker coming in from Andrew. Thank you so much for the generous support. And then we have 2 super chats coming in from Drawn TJ. He says, "Hi Archimedes and Rand. Hi
what's
to
up?
You. I still owe you that Age of Empires 4 match. We have to do that over the weekend." And he also sends in another $5 and says, "Who cares about Max Payne? Where is GTA 6?
I care about Max Payne.
Yeah, me too. So let's move over to the news and let's talk about Max Payne. All right, Max Payne has been announced, a remake of the first two games, and I do care a lot about it. Let me get some facts out that they released for those who did miss it. Remedy announced that they are working on a current gen only and PC remake for Max Payne 1 and 2. Rockstar is funding the development for this, and it will be a full remake in the current version of the Northlight engine. That's the engine that also powered games like Control. And Remedy's CEO, Taro, now I have no idea how to pronounce his last name, Mortala, something like that, had the following to say about this project. Max Payne has always held a special place in the hearts of everyone at Remedy, and we know that millions of fans worldwide feel the same. We are hugely excited to be working with our partners at Rockstar Games once again for the chance to bring the story, action, and atmosphere of the original Max Payne back to players in new ways. So, Rand, you already said you're excited for it. What do you think is this remake going to be? Is it really just a remake? Because they also said they are trying to bring it back in new ways. What do you think?
First off, I don't think anybody had this on their bingo card for the year, right? Like, I don't think we knew EA's redoing Dead Space, right? Which is another game I'm incredibly looking forward to, but I don't think I've never heard anybody be like, you know what they should do? They should remake Max Payne 1 and 2, right? It's just not something people say. And
I did hear a lot that Max Payne 3 should come to the backward compatibility program.
I think it's actually in the backwards compatibility program, isn't it?
It
was
now?
one of the last games added before they shut down the service. But I'm not sure if it got FPS boost or not.
Yeah.
Which I think is what people want. Okay. Like I think people wanted like a remaster of Max Payne 3 to bring it up to like next gen standards, like 4K 60, or like another sequel. Like I love Max Payne 3. I love the whole Max Payne trilogy. I would love to see a sequel like Max Payne 4. But I don't know about you. It's been a long time since I played Max Payne 1 and 2. It's been quite a long time.
I tried to go back to Max Payne 2 somewhere in last summer. I gave it a try, and honestly, it didn't hold up that well from the mechanics point of view. Because back in the days, the controls for these third-person shooters were simply different, and so it kind of felt weird to me, not just from a graphics point of view. So, but if it's simply the controls that didn't do it for me. But yeah, I would love to see that improved in this remake, not just graphics, but also bring it to modern day controls, and kind of the reload was so weird. I totally forget about that, how they did the reload of the weapons and stuff. So yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, so I wouldn't be that excited if this was a remaster, right? Because I feel like Max Payne 1 and 2 are old enough where like they need significant changes to, like you said, how the game plays, plus how the game looks. And you look at like Alan Wake Remastered, granted that's a 360 game, but they didn't really do much to Alan Wake Remastered, right? Like I'm happy Alan Wake 2's coming back, there's a new Alan Wake, but they didn't really do anything to Alan Wake. So the fact that this is a remake and they're doing it in a different engine, they're doing it in their Quantum Break.
The Northlight engine.
Yeah, the Northlight engine. It makes me think, at least the way I'm envisioning it in my mind's eye is like a full-blown, here's Max Payne 1 on, like looking like Quantum Break or looking like Control or whatever, and I couldn't be more excited for that. Like, I didn't even know I wanted this. Like, if you're just like, Max Payne 1 and 2 remade, yes, sign me up day one. I don't care. You could be like, what about new experiences and stuff? Like, sure, and I'm all for that.
Yeah.
But there are just some classics.
Yeah,
these are classics, and
absolutely.
Remedy does seem to be biting off a lot. Like they're doing Alan Wake 2, right? Yeah. We know they have some sort of co-op game that they're also working on. I forget the project name. Now they're working on Max Payne 1 and 2, which I think they said it's a single release for next gen. Yeah. they're most likely also going to be working on Control 2 because I think that did pretty well. So they're a busy studio doing a lot of
They
stuff.
are. They are. They said that it's a fourth projects that they're working on, and you just mentioned the three that we know of. And now the question is, what is the fourth? You said Control 2. Could be, but they have also over the last years regularly released new IPs, and since they already do like the remake now, I could also see them work on a new IP there. But yeah, Drawn TJ sends in a super chat answering, following up on the his first super chat. He says, "Lol, your reaction to my last super chat. I'm happy for Max Payne. I'm glad you're happy because we are too." Yeah, good stuff. So that was actually definitely a surprise this week. Like you said, I don't think anyone had it on their radar. Another thing that happened this week, along with the announcement that Unreal Engine 5 is out now, were a couple of other game announcements, and we will talk about them. But first, I want to hear your general thoughts about this Unreal 5 release now. It's for everyone. It's now available to all developers, so that the engine is now fully released. There's also a starter game called Lyra that is also available for developers who download the engine to toy around in the engine. And they had an entire showcase to launch this engine. I have never seen something like that. So much hype around the game engine. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a lot of hype around the tech side. I mean, I remember when people
Yeah.
were going crazy over the tech demo that Unreal put out before the consoles released. If you remember,
Yeah.
I forget the name of the
PlayStation
demo.
only.
Yeah, like, this is only going to be possible on the PS5, and it's
Yeah.
yo, like almost like half the studios of Xbox work in Unreal. Like, what are you talking about? Yeah, but I only really caught the coalitions because I'm not a tech guy.
Okay.
I know you're a tech guy. A lot of your videos
I love that
help
stuff.
explaining the tech stuff. I'm not a tech guy whatsoever, so a lot of the minutia of the details really kind of goes over my head, and so I thought what the coalition showed looked really cool.
It did. Absolutely.
And we do know that they're working on Gear 6, but they said they're not going to have any announcements soon. Probably, I would say 2024, 2025 before the next Gears game comes out. But, according to like my buddy Jez Corden and Jeff Grubb, there might be a new coalition project that potentially might be actually coming out next year, like a smaller game that they were working on to help get them sort of understanding everything around Unreal Engine 5. But then seeing that cutscene or whatever you want to call it, I was just like, man, because I know a lot of people like today, like we're 2022, the consoles have been out for a year and like 6 months, right? It's been like a year, 6 months or something.
A year and 6 months, yeah, already.
A lot of people are kind of like, this generation so far has been okay because there's been a lot of cross-gen, right?
Yeah.
Which understandable from a business perspective, plus the chip shortages and stuff.
Yeah.
There really hasn't been many two games to push what people perceive the next gen capabilities to their max, right? Which usually happens later on in the generation. But when you see something like that and you realize, man, Gears 6 is probably going to be next gen only when it does release, and you think about like what Gears 5 looked like back in 2019, one of the best looking games last gen, and then what they did with Hivebusters on the Series X, you realize that, they are masters of their craft. They probably know Unreal Engine better or just as well as perhaps as Epic themselves. I can't wait to see what they do with that engine. They're the workhorse of Xbox Game Studios. They basically held down last generation for Xbox. So what? I mean, so you're the tech guy. What did you see from all this?
Well, I was super excited to see that. I really liked, in general, the presentation of Epic. They really gave a great insight, not just with, let's say, more casual announcements like the Coalition trailer and the next Tomb Raider game, but also they kind of really showed the benefits of the new editor and what the how the engine is going to help developers to make the development the design process easier. So I really like that. And speaking of the coalition themselves now with that tech demo, that was really impressive. That demo ran on an Xbox Series X. The technical director at the coalition, Kate Renner, she confirmed that. That thing ran in real time on Xbox Series X. So it is in the ballpark what we should expect for the next coalition game. Like you said, the rumors are out there that the smaller project is coming. So that's really exciting. And it is like you said, if you think about Gears 5, which was relatively at the end of the generation, and if you think of one of the first games, Unreal games that we have seen on Xbox, it was actually a launch game, the zombie game. Now I'm blanking on the name.
Dying Light or
Not Dying Light.
Dead Island.
It was the third iteration. It was the launch game of the Xbox One.
Dead Rising.
Dead Rising 3. Thank you. Yeah, both in the same engine. Both run on the same hardware, and there were 7 years in between them, and that just tells you that hardware is only one part of the story. There's always a big development going on software, and this is only the beginning. And we have seen that Unreal Engine Matrix demo. I don't know whether you have played that.
No, but I've seen it. I've seen it played,
and it is really impressive. And the coalition helped to do that, and they because you said they know the engine better than Epic. It was funny. There was an interview released this week with Kate Renner, the technical director at the coalition, and she actually said it was their honor that Epic approached them in particular to help them out with that demo, to show what can be done with Nanite and Lumen and all these technologies that are included in the Unreal Engine 5. So yeah, it's exciting to see how the coalition can push that engine forward. And I mean, if we also think about all the other Xbox studios that are using that engine, they will also participate on that know-how. We know that a lot of the studios talk to each other and share technology know-how. Ninja Theory, Obsidian, in Exile, there are so many studios in the Xbox roster using that engine, and they all can build upon that foundation and that know-how that the coalition is developing. So I think we have great times ahead. Absolutely. And one other thing I want to briefly touch on that you mentioned, that people say, yeah, well, we only had cross-gen releases so far. And that's true. 1.5 years into that generation, and for the most part, we only had cross-gen releases. But a lot of the games that we are playing that are coming out now were actually originally scheduled for last year, and simply because of the pandemic, they got delayed. So of course the cross-gen period gets spread out a little bit. But every Xbox game that has been announced so far and is coming out at the end of the year or next year, whenever, we only have current gen only games announced from the Xbox side of things.
Redfall's only been announced so far for next gen. Same thing with Starfield. Hellblade.
And even the third party games like a Stalker Stalker 2 is current gen only. So I think that we will see this shift from cross gen happening really soon with the next releases. I mean, Redfall, still scheduled for summer, but who knows?
I would imagine that's going to be a fall release.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, we already are in April, mid of April already, right? And we have seen absolutely nothing about that game outside of that cinematic trailer. So I don't think that it will come out in summer, because that would mean what now? July, August, something like that. I think it's gonna be a fall release too. Yeah. Yeah. Another game has been announced along with Unreal 5, and that is Tomb Raider.
I don't know about you, but I love me some Tomb Raider.
Oh yeah.
I really was a fan. Like, I'm a fan of all the Tomb Raider. Like how they used to do it. with the originals, the reboot that Crystal Dynamics did. Like, I'm a big fan, and I think we already sort of knew that so we got. I think one of their studios is working on Perfect Dark. They're helping out the initiative.
Yeah.
And I even think I think the initiative is doing Unreal Engine 5 for Perfect Dark, because that was listed. Yep. And then their other studio was rumored to be working on Tomb Raider. And I think they opened up a third studio, but and I think they have some people working on Marvel Avengers, but I mean, who knows for how long at this point, right?
Yeah,
I do wonder
how a side team now.
Yeah, I do wonder how far into development Tomb Raider is. They kind of made it sound like it was sort of starting development. But I'm really excited to see the direction they take it. Is this going to remain in the footsteps of the reboot and just kind of continue on with that story? Is this going to be just another, like, are we going to be going back and be like, Lara Croft starting her journey again, I wonder
another origin story.
I wonder how it's is it gonna be open world? Because the Crystal Dynamics games were sort of that semi-open world, like wide linear, I think people call them, where it was like you'd have an area that's sort of big, but there's only really one way to go through it, and then like you kind of like.
Once you moved on, you basically moved on, and there was really no reason to go back to explore more of that area. Yeah.
So I'm super excited. I'm really excited to see what they do with Tomb Raider.
I love the Tomb Raider. Rise of the Tomb Raider, the second in the entry, was my favorite. I remember when that came out, it looked mind-blowing. They actually had a very, very great-looking engine called the Foundation engine that they used. It was a proprietary engine. And I thought it was fantastic looking. So I was kind of surprised that they are moving over now to Unreal. And this is a question I want to ask you. We have seen this now with a couple of bigger studios. Like just, I think last week or 2 weeks ago, we had the announcement that CD Projekt Red is moving on from their Red engine, and with The Witcher 4 or whatever it will be, they will also use Unreal Engine. And Crystal Dynamics had a great engine with the Foundation engine. So we have seen that now a couple of times that bigger studios seem to drop their proprietary engine and all move over to Unreal. Do you think, should we be concerned in the sense of that we don't have enough diversity of engines anymore and everything is eventually going to run on Unreal? What are your thoughts?
I mean, I could see the point you're making there where it's like, everything in the future, 10, 15 years from now is going to be Unreal. But sometimes a lot of Unreal games, especially, they don't really look like one another. And I think a lot of it has to do with like ease of use, right? Proprietary engines are sort of hard to understand. And when you're hiring for these projects, someone might be versed in Unreal, but they don't understand your engine. And I think maybe that has something to do with it. Like CD Projekt Red,
I agree.
Say what you will about like The Witcher or especially Cyberpunk, huge games, like massive sellers, right?
Yeah.
The fact that they're moving to Unreal, and then you always hear about these things about how hard it's right now to hire people, right? So I think maybe it's more like, maybe Epic has given them sort of like a backdoor deal where it's like, we want to show, because one of the criticisms of Unreal is that it really couldn't do open world games, right? But the next Witcher game is going to be completely open world. We don't know what Tomb Raider is going to be. So there's part of it where like Epic wants to make sure that like we can do all facets of any type of games. Plus,
Avowed is going to be an open world game.
Yes.
In the Unreal.
Yeah. Plus, like there's the whole job hiring thing. Like, there might be like, okay, somebody's coming to this position, it's Unreal Engine, they already know how to work with it. It's easy to understand because you've been using it forever, versus like, hey, come work on the Northlight engine, or come work on the Red engine, or come work on this engine or whatever. And candidates may not be well versed in it, so it's harder for those companies to essentially hire people simply because of the engines they use. I think maybe that's a factor. Although I'm just kind of, I don't know for sure. I'm just speaking off, stuff that, I potentially think is going on, but I don't know. I'm not in the video game industry, but I do constantly hear about how hard it is for to hire people. And I think part of it is like, Yeah.
I think
So
you're onto something there. This is definitely one consideration. Like you don't have to train new employees that much in a industry standard engine, yeah. But if you have a proprietary engine, that's a completely different story. The thing is, I think another thing we always forget is how hard and expensive it is to actually develop an engine, a state
that's
of the
true.
art engine. And we've seen what Unreal can do now. And if you want to develop a state of the art engine, and I think a lot of these studios want to have the top notch visuals in their games, so you kind of have to have a state of the art engine. You have to have that support for high resolution textures and fast load times, and all these things like ray tracing, and everything needs to be implemented in that engine, and that is simply really expensive. And I think only the very big publishers will be able to afford that going forward, if you want to move over to these really photorealistic looking game engines. I mean, there are still a lot of good ones out there. We have still the Cry engine out there. We have the Unity engine out there. There are really other engines as well. But I found it interesting that some of the great looking engines that we knew from last gen, like the Tomb Raider Foundation engine or the Red engine from CD Projekt Red, are basically gone now. Yeah. What do you think when we look at the Xbox studios in particular? With the acquisition of Bethesda, they've got some amazing engines as well. ITTech is probably one
Yeah.
of the most evolved ones, and then we have the Creation engine that is used in the Bethesda studio games. And now, first time we will see it in Starfield. What do you think? Will there be other crossovers that we see, like I don't know, 343 ditching the Slipspace engine and move over to ITTech or something like that? What do you think?
I know a lot of people like that idea of like Halo on id Tech, but I can't imagine. I can't imagine a 343 doing that, especially after all the amount of time they spent building slip space and training people on it to then just go to id Tech because they would have to train people on it. So I don't really see a lot of. I mean, maybe I'm wrong here, but I don't really see a lot of people using id Tech's engine outside of id Tech and
Okay.
whatever game they're doing.
I mean, Machine Games has been using ITTech for Wolfenstein.
Yeah, well, that's within Bethesda.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine like, for instance, like Ninja Theory suddenly doing one of their next games after Hellblade, like, oh, we're moving to id Tech 7, right?
Yeah.
Or something like the Initiative or whatever. I think companies are going to just use whatever engines they feel most comfortable with. Because even doesn't Arcane even use their own engine? I believe, isn't it like?
Yeah, they had their own engine, but for Deathloop they moved on.
They moved on to
was
it Unreal for?
Hang on, I had it in a video the other day, and that's why I knew that they moved on. Where is it? I can't find it in my script here right now. Yeah, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
There are a lot of Xbox studios working on Unreal, though.
Yeah,
a lot more than you
true.
would think. There's
Exile is working on it.
Yeah.
Obsidian is working on it or with it. Yeah, absolutely.
Coalition. There were rumors that Playground was going to be using Unreal for Fable, but I don't think that's true. I think they're using Forza Tech for Fable, the new Fable game. Yeah.
It is a deviation of the Void engine that is actually running on an ITTech. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, let me just briefly catch up on one of the super chats that came in from Outbreak Podcast. He sends in $2 and says, "Rand, great interview. When will Xbox show more games?"
When will Xbox show more games? That's the question everybody wants the answer to. I would, and it's funny because I think me and you were talking about it before the show even
Yeah.
started. Yeah, like, and I don't know if this is one of your topics. I don't know if we're kind of going into another topic you had picked out, but with E3 being canceled,
Yeah.
which was last week, I think you asked me like, "Hey, is there a chance Microsoft was like, well, we don't need to do June anymore, so either maybe let's move it back a month or move it forward a month." So when they show more games, I would guess most likely in June, whenever the Summer Games Fest is, with a small possibility potentially that they do something in May as well. I know people are really, really looking forward to this year's, Summer Soak. Do you even call it E3 anymore? I know like that's what people have been calling it for years, but like, because we just went through a year where we had Psychonauts 2 and Microsoft Flight Sim, and we had Forza and Halo. Great year.
And Age of Empires 4, don't forget.
Age of Empires 4, but I don't.
It.
But you know what? I don't really consider that, and I always forget it simply because Microsoft doesn't put it on console.
Yeah, it was my most played game in 2021.
Yeah, so for me, I always skip over it because it's like it didn't come to console. So if it doesn't come to console, it doesn't really exist to me because I'm not going to play it on PC. Although I'm pretty sure Age of Empires 4 is coming to console at some point.
Yeah,
maybe this year. Yeah, people want to know, like, okay, I want to see Starfield gameplay. Everybody wants to see Starfield gameplay.
Sure.
They want to see Redfall gameplay because, as you mentioned before, they said summer of 2022. Well, summer starts in July and ends in September, and we're already in April, so there's not that much time left to really showcase what Redfall is. People want to see Forza Motorsport. I saw a bunch of people get invites to, essentially play testing.
They sent that out. I actually had that as a optional topic for today. They sent out invites for an Forza Insider program. I actually know someone who is in there and has played it, but I really can't talk about it because he's strict NDA. But a lot of more people got the invite for Forza.
Yeah. So I mean, there's the rumors that that game will come this year, but people even when you say it, people are like, "I want to see it," which I get, like, because I totally want to see Starfield. Like, I want to know what that game's all about. Like, yeah, sure. Listening to Todd Howard talk about the game in these videos with concept art is interesting, and it definitely shows Microsoft is sort of, they feel really good about the game because, you know what? Like, when you think about it, all this stuff, all this like hype around Starfield with these videos they didn't do any of this stuff for Halo. They haven't done any of this stuff for any of their games.
Yeah,
like I think
Starfield such a marketing campaign. Just this week, did you see it? There was this 1 minute video where they introduced the companion in the game, Vasco. And like you said, we haven't seen that for any of their games so far. More or less on a weekly basis now. Last week we got the interview with the art director, Emil Pagliarulo or something like that, and it's really interesting.
Yeah, so it's like one of those things where you feel that Microsoft feels very confident in the game, right? But still, a lot of people aren't going to get excited until they see what the game is. So I understand people wanting to, because I want to see not only like those games, but like what's coming next year, Microsoft, right? When is Hellblade releasing? Is it next year? Avowed, Contraband, Perfect Dark, Fable, what is In Exile's next project? What is Compulsion working on? Like, there's a lot of games that Microsoft, has announced that we haven't.
K3.
State of K3.
So many games.
What's Bethesda working on? Like, we know Starfield and Redfall, but outside of that, like,
I mean, we know that they are working on a Quake reboot.
I mean, that's the rumors that it's working on a Quake reboot, and
it was there was recently. It was like 3-4 weeks ago. There was a job listing on the official Bethesda website, and they particularly searched for people working on the next Quake game. So
But even still, like ZeniMax Online's got a new game they're working on, but we don't know.
Machine
Arcane
Games with Wolfenstein 3. What is going on there?
Yeah, what is it? Are they only really like Indiana Jones? Like we don't, we know they're working on Indiana Jones, but so like there's a lot of question marks from a lot of these studios that Xbox has, not only from those studios but also partnerships, like Contraband and all these other ones that Jez and Jeff Grubb have all these project names for,
like Project Dragon from IO Interactive. And
so I'm with like everybody. Like, where are the games? I want to see them. And I know it's like, you gotta be patient because they do things at their own pace. But it shouldn't be. I mean, it's either gonna be June or maybe May. So you don't got that much longer to. You got maybe 2 months more to wait. So. And then people, it's gonna be interesting seeing the reactions because Microsoft is going to hold stuff back, right?
Yeah.
Like Avowed was supposed to be at last year's E3, and they pulled it and they showed or announced Outer Worlds 2, right?
Yeah.
So I'm sure there'd be a bunch of the studios that probably sent stuff, and Microsoft decides to like hold off. Maybe maybe they're thinking about doing an XO at the end of the year, or whatever. But
cool.
I'm just I want to see the games as much as anybody else does. So
and I do hope you are right. I could see we talked about this before the show. I could see them move the showcase also out to July or so to just give some of the developers a little bit more time to capture better footage if stuff isn't ready. But it's time because they have been quiet for a while now. After the announcement of the Activision Blizzard deal, we only got minor news like new Game Pass games or now collaboration with Epic on the Coalition demo and stuff like that. But it's time that we see those games. And like you said, some of these games have been quite a while already announced and in development. I always say, when we heard the first time about the rumor of Fable being in development, what do you think?
I mean, I think Phil kind of mentioned it at 2018, and there was talk around 2018
in January 2017 that Peter Molyneux spoke about it, and he heard about a British studio who got the IP. So that was January 2017. And that's more than 5 years now. So it would be time to at least show a little bit of the game. What's the graphics gonna look like? What's the vision for the game? I
mean, I would love to see it. I've always pegged Fable as a 2024 title. So there's the chance we don't see it this year. But out of all the games out there, the one that I'm really interested in seeing, just like you said, I want to see what it looks like as Fable. Because Fable was always very much a very colorful, distinct art style. And I wonder if it's going to be just like the CGI trailer that they showed, if that's what they're really going to go for. Plus, it's going to say a lot about Playground as a studio. They already dominate the racing genre with Horizon series. Like, can they make a mark in the RPGs? Because if they are able to like nail Fable, then you got to put them as like one of the best studios in gaming. Period. Not because they do a racing game and an RPG, an action RPG. Like you'd have to put them up at the top.
And the studio had actually spoke about that a few years ago. There was an interview that's their target. They want to become one of the best gaming studios out there. So I think their ambition for the game is really high. And since we know that Fable is going to run on the Forza engine, I think it's time to see Forza first before they show Fable. Do you think that will be shown and released this year? What do you think?
Yeah, I think Forza Motorsport. I think there's a good chance Forza Motorsport comes out this fall. Like, my expectations for the end of this year is As Dusk Falls will come out, which is a global publishing game, but maybe towards the end of summer. And September would be when Deathloop hits Xbox, so that'll be coming over to Xbox Game Pass. I had Forza Motorsport pegged for end of September. I had pegged Redfall for around Halloween because it's a vampire game. Like,
Yeah.
why wouldn't you release a vampire game around
Well, because it's very
Halloween?
close to Starfield.
Yeah, but Starfield's November 11th.
Yeah.
And, I'm saying, like, you could release, like, Redfall, like, October 20th or something, right? And
Yeah.
still give enough of a thing. I mean, because hell, Microsoft released Forza Horizon and Halo Infinite, like, a week apart.
Yeah, true
right?
that.
So they're not that too concerned about it, I guess. Although that was just a multiplayer, so maybe there's difference because that wasn't the full release. But yeah, and then Starfield is the 11th, so yeah. Then people want to know: is there going to be something for early next year, January, February, March, Hellblade or Avowed or Contraband or something? So
Yeah. What's your guess on Avowed?
Hmm.
I've said Avowed is one of probably my most anticipated Xbox game, and simply for the reason because I love how Obsidian is doing RPGs. And Skyrim is also one of my favorite games of all time, probably in my top 3. And seeing those two mixed together, I'm super excited for it. And I know you have seen a little bit of it.
Yeah.
So what's your guess here?
My guess, like when it comes out,
Yeah.
I think at one point it was targeting an end of 2022 release, and they moved it to 2023. So it's really hard to say without knowing when Contraband or Hellblade or any of these other games comes out, because I do think they want to stagger them.
Yeah.
So I would say Avowed is probably end of the year release. If I'm gonna make a bet, I think Avowed is end of the year. I think personally I would love it if Hellblade was beginning of the year. But yeah, because we've seen more of Hellblade than we've seen of Avowed.
Yes, true that.
So yeah, that's my guess right now. But my opinions are subject to change based on new information whenever I do receive new information. So that my opinion may differ in a month or 2 months from now. So
of course, that's all speculation and up for change if we get new information. And maybe they show at the June showcase. We gotta stop calling it E3 showcase. The June showcase. Maybe they show it and it looks super polished, and then it could be a guess for the early 23. So yeah, we will see. Let me briefly catch up on some of the super chats that came in. Drawn TJ sends in $5 and asking, "Is IO using Unreal 5?"
They have their own engine, don't they?
They have their own
engine.
Glacier, the Glacier engine. That's the Hitman engine. So I really don't know whether they are going to use that for Project Dragon or whatever that game will be. I recently said I don't think that the game will actually have dragons in it, because just of the project name doesn't mean that it's necessarily in the game. I don't know. What do you think? What that game will be?
What game?
The IO Interactive.
Project Dragon. I don't know what I can say, so I'm not going to say anything.
So that's totally fine. Now let me continue with the super chats. Two Madrinos just sends in $1, and thank you so much for that. And another one from Drawn TJ says, "I want to see State of Decay 3. And when do you think Call of Duty will be day one in Game Pass? Do you think they can make a deal to get it into Game Pass?"
The Call of Duty thing's interesting because first off, you have two different points here, right? One, you don't know when the deal's going to close. I don't think it's closing this year. So that would rule out Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, right? Second, and maybe superseding it, is I believe Sony has the marketing rights for the next two Call of Duty games, which more than likely would prevent Xbox from putting that game into Game Pass, even if they own it. So, hypothetically...
Well, I heard Hoke Law speak on that, and that marketing deal was made many years ago, when Game Pass really wasn't a deal. So it could be that in the marketing contracts for Call of Duty, there isn't a clause in that forbids the game to come to Game Pass, like MLB The Show. They also have the marketing rights for that, obviously. But there
Right.
wasn't something in there. So
Well, the problem is we don't know their contracts,
yeah,
right? So
speculation. Tom.
speculation. I know. I want to say the Call of Duty marketing rights were re-up not that long ago. But so the way I look at it is like, even if hypothetically, let's say Microsoft closes the Activision deal, let's say by September, right,
Yeah.
or even July. I don't think Microsoft would be able. One, I don't think Microsoft would be even marketing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, because we know Microsoft likes to honor contracts, and I think pretty sure Sony has the marketing contract for Call of Duty, so they would market it. And we've seen some of their contracts, like with Resident Evil Village, where like it prevents it from joining a competitor's subscription service, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine the same thing is in it. So unless somehow Microsoft is able to like work a deal with Sony, where which maybe they can, because Microsoft holds the leverage. Well, then again, like, who knows what the government's going to make Xbox do? Like, we already know
I don't
Microsoft.
think they will leverage anything before the deal has gone through, because they would be simply too afraid if something comes out that, I don't know, Microsoft is offering Sony to I don't know, keep it on the system if they are allowed to put it in Game Pass or something like that. I think that wouldn't help them in the acquisition process. So I don't think that they will do anything right now with that. So when they originally announced it, my first thought was, maybe they do a deal for this year. But the more information we learned and heard, and how difficult it actually will be to acquire Activision, I don't think that they will do it this year. I could see it happen, of course, next year when that deal is through.
Yeah, but the thing is, like Jason Schreier's reporting, there is no COD game next year. That 2024's COD game is got delayed to 2020. 2023's COD game got delayed to 2024.
True.
Which there's a possibility if Sony owns the marketing rights for the next two, there's all the chance in the world that the first Call of Duty game that goes day one to Game Pass is Call of Duty 2025 or Call of Duty 2026. So there's just too many unknown variables right now about all that stuff, but I'm sure they'll get in all the previous Call of Duty games whenever the deal is. Well, we're also assuming the deal will get finalized, but there's a lot of the FTC is going through a lot of things right now, and it's like, who knows what's going to happen. So
I think probably Microsoft thought this deal would be smoother than it is right now.
No, you know what? I think they knew it would be, because like they came out and it was like, we're gonna keep Call of Duty multi-platform. Like they came out and said these things, and I think they knew there was going to be some pushback. So they were like kind of positioning themselves as being like, hey, look how good we are, with what we're doing, and this is our plans, and they're not rocking the boat. I think they knew that things would sort of be rocky. I mean, it's a $70 billion deal. It's going to get looked at. And especially now with how, the government is like looking at tech and stuff. So I think they knew. I don't know if they knew it would be this, like,
I mean, I think they knew that there was a risk. But if they didn't see the chances more in favor of the deal going through, I don't think they would have announced it. You said something right before the show to me that if that deal fails, it will cost them a lot of money, and so I think they thought very well about how big are our chances. And if they didn't say, well, it's like, I don't know, 70 or 80% chances of actually going through, we don't announce something like that. So yeah, and now we hear people say it's more like 50-50 now.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, Hoglaw, who's really smart, knows all about this stuff. He says 75-25. So I'll go with Hogel on this. He's way smarter than me, and he actually deals with mergers and acquisitions. So
true. So let's keep it at 75% then. Yeah, the other question from Draw DJ was about State of Decay 3. What do you think? Where is this game positioned?
Yeah, there was a lot of this. I don't know if it was last week where the article came out about Undead Labs, and people were getting a little worried. So yeah, that was revealed at 2020. Another one of those games that were revealed early, CGI trailer. Yeah, I mean, I've always sort of pegged State of Decay as a 2024 title. So, with that said, I mean, they could show it this year for sure, but I don't expect it to release until 2024. I could be wrong, but in my mind, there's like a list of games that I know coming from Xbox, and I sort of have years pegged for them and stuff. And State of Decay 3 was always sort of pegged as a 2024 game for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the way how they supported State of Decay 2, I think that was absolutely amazing, but it took up a lot of resources, and it is a small studio still. So I don't know how far they have progressed with the development of State of Decay 3, and I agree it could definitely be a 24 title, if not even a 25 title. I think the idea behind all these CGI announcements from Xbox was to simply lay out a certain roadmap for the first half of this generation. So what are we getting in the first 4 years that people really have this idea? If you invest into Xbox, am I getting down the line without having specific dates? But okay, this and this is coming, and this was a good job definitely on Xbox side to do that. But now it's definitely time to actually show some of the games in action, and I think they will show the games in action that are coming out within a year or so, because showing gameplay like of a game like that is 2 years out or something is risky these days when people then talk about downgrades and stuff like that. Yeah. So if we think about all these things, we have a lot of games. Probably 23 is going to be packed with Xbox games. Now, if we think about this year, we already talked about Redfall and Starfield. Maybe Forza, we said. What else is coming into Game Pass? I have a list here of some of the bigger games that have been announced. That's Warhammer Darktide is coming. Then we have a Plague Tale coming to Game Pass. We have Scorn, As Dusk Falls, Sniper Elite 5, Somerville is coming, and you already mentioned maybe Age of Empires 4 port for consoles, and maybe Deathloop, because that still isn't really confirmed, and we don't know whether they have an actual deal like Square Enix and the Final Fantasy VII remake, where we all thought it comes out on consoles a year later, and we still don't have it. So when we look at this roadmap here, I left out 2 games actually. That's Atomic Heart and Stalker 2, because I don't think both of these games are coming this year. So yeah, with the situation in Ukraine and Russia, yeah. So do you think this is a good roadmap? Do you think there should be a little bit more, less? What are your thoughts about this Game Pass?
Obviously, you want more
this year. Yeah,
you want more.
Sure.
You never want less for Game Pass. The problem is we don't really know what's actually coming out at the end of the year. Or, Microsoft last year, they we know Stalker 2, but that more, like you said, not coming more than likely. Somerville. I'm sure at this year's E3 we'll get even more announcements for games coming for this year in Game Pass and then early next year. I think the big question people have is what's the next big third-party AAA, right?
Yeah.
Because, games like Tunic are great and stuff. What really moves the needle for a lot of people is, stuff like Back 4 Blood Day 1 or Outriders, or even stuff like Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy, 4 months later.
Yeah.
So I know it's funny because every single month I see people speculating about like, okay, well this month, I remember when it was January and Microsoft had a really great January. It was like Hitman,
Absolutely.
it was Mass Effect, it was I'm blanking on the other ones, but they had a really good January, right?
Yeah.
And then people were like, well, February's got Dying Light, it's got Elden Ring, it's got this game and that game, and every single week people were speculating it's going to be Dying Light. And when it wasn't Dying Light, it was like, oh, it's got to be Elden Ring then, right? And then it wasn't. And then, the thing is, like, you just never know because you don't know how other publishers feel about the service.
Yeah.
I still think there's a lot of pushback when it comes to launching your game day one. I think especially from the bigger publishers. I think they view it more as like, we will do it, but we'll do it 5 to 6 months later. We're not going to do it day one.
Kind of like Square did with Guardian, so 4 or 5 months after release.
Yeah. And I think Life is Strange is coming to Game Pass this month, and I think that came out in September of last year, I believe.
Yeah.
So I still think Xbox has a lot of work ahead of them to sort of convince other publishers that this is only going to benefit your game. Because like this is a new like strategy, it's a new paradigm, and a lot of companies are afraid of change. A lot of companies are like, well, what happens if I put this game in Game Pass and not as many people buy it, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And they think people, less people would engage with it and stuff. So I still think that's a mountain that Xbox has to climb. I mean, they have very big aspirations for Game Pass, and their last announced number was like over 25 million.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty good considering, for the most part, like, Xbox studios haven't released much. Like, when you sit down and think about what Xbox has put out this generation, it's not really a lot. Really, none of their studios they acquired have put anything out since so it's been Halo Infinite, and it's been Forza, and it's been Psychonauts, it's Gears Tactics,
and
H4, which only on the PC side, and Microsoft Flight Sim. Bethesda hasn't put anything in it yet, right?
Yeah.
And any of the studios Microsoft acquired in 2018 and 2019, outside of Psychonauts, like we haven't seen Fable from Playground, State of Decay 3 from Undead, any of the games from Ninja Theory. Like we knew.
Well, Outer Worlds 1 came into Game Pass.
Well, yeah, they were working on it at the time, and just like Ninja Theory was already working on Bleeding Edge, and Obsidian was already working on Grounded and stuff. So, I think they're doing well for the fact that they really haven't released a dearth of content, and hopefully that changes starting this fall. Because if you can put out a strong mix of like Deathloop and Redfall and Forza and Starfield, because I think the Starfield is going to be the tipping point. If it's as good as I think Microsoft believes it is, like a new IP from the people behind Fallout 4 and Skyrim, that's going to speak to a lot of people. And then the problem is with Xbox is they can't keep up the momentum, right? They had great momentum coming out of last year. Number 1 publisher on Metacritic, Forza, Halo, Psychonauts 2, 3 amazing games. But then it sort of just fizzled out, and there's really like not anything until Redfall, right? So the problem is Microsoft runs out of momentum, and a lot of people, just like with like Netflix or whatever, they like, oh, I'll subscribe and I'll play this, and then it's like, well, there's really nothing I want until 6 more months so they unsubscribe. So if Microsoft can hit out those games at the end of the year and then come out with like a Hellblade at the beginning of next year and a Contraband around the same time, and then have like some of the other titles like Avowed or whatever for the end of the year, I think that will finally show people what Game Pass is really gonna do. And I really hope other third parties start to like kind of like, okay, Microsoft is onto something here. Because as much as I love indie games and as much as they are like the lifeblood, I don't really think they speak too strongly with a general audience that would want to subscribe to Game Pass anyways, right?
Yeah,
so
it's more for the hardcore gamer community that already subscribed, and for
Yeah.
them it's great value to bring those in. And I discovered tons of indie games I probably wouldn't have tried out. But I agree with you. The draw into the subscription for the masses is with these bigger, well-known IPs or big names behind them. So I always said big gap would, for instance, be like a Gotham Knights. If you could bring that in day one, that would be
Yeah, that would be.
that
But
exactly.
let
That
me
would,
ask you this: do you think that's realistic, though?
yeah,
I know Warner Brothers. They did put Back for Blood in Game Pass, which makes a lot of
yep.
sense. 4-player co-op game. We know Gotham Knights is a 2-player co-op game, so maybe
It's
they're
also yeah,
maybe
four
okay.
player
You have
co-op.
the relationship with WB, but then
Yeah,
do you want to do that with Gotham Knights?
yeah,
And
exactly.
even forget next year. Like, I think people underestimate like what Call of Duty could do for Game Pass, but we don't know when it would hit day one. But we
Yeah,
do know that Diablo 4 and Overwatch 2 are coming next year, and we know, at least I think, we have Hellblade 2 and Avowed and Contraband among others coming next year. So if the Activision deal goes through either this year or early next year, if Microsoft can get that deal done and then also have Overwatch 2 and Diablo 4 launch
Diablo
day 1 in Game Pass
along with the
alongside all those
Hellblade.
other games,
Yeah, yeah,
that would be huge. And that would be the momentum that I think Game Pass misses from time to time. Like,
yeah.
so
Yeah, but I'm with you. That momentum thing is definitely their problem right now, because the first 7-8 months there's really nothing of this year, nothing on a bigger scale coming, and then they will fire on all cylinders in like 2 or 3 months with Forza, with Redfall, with Starfield, and but I think with Starfield and going into 23, they now should have, with all these studios, even outside of the Activision studios, they have 23 studios that are working on what, more than 30 different games. You should come into that cadence where you have like every 2 or 3 months a game ready. Because, like you said, so far none of these studios that have been acquired in 2018, which is already 4 years now, yeah, have released anything. So I have no doubt that this is gonna change significantly in 23 and beyond. That this will be the tipping point. Starfield this fall season, and then we really have this continuous stream of content coming. So, what do you think up until then? You mentioned Redfall, maybe October or September, October. Is the next big thing. So up until then, do we get anything? There has been the rumor that a Plague Tale could come out in
yeah,
June.
I think Plague Tale probably come out in June. I mean, the
Yeah,
trophy list is already out there, which means it's got
yeah.
to be close. And I love the first Plague Tale, so that is
Oh yeah.
definitely going to be a big game. I'll be there day one. It's tough to say what other games they could get because it's tough to say what other games are coming out at the end of the
Mm.
year. Because I know Saints Row was supposed to come out in February and then they delayed it to August.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I mean that could be a game you could kind of go after, but it's like who owns who owns that studio? Is that
THQ.
Embracer Group? I think that owns them. I don't. Off the top of my head, I'm not sure. It's really too hard to
Yeah.
predict Game Pass games, right?
Mhm.
That's why I sort of hate every single month I see people
Deep
being
Silver.
like,
It's Deep Silver.
"Oh, Deep
Saints
Silver,"
Row.
which I believe
Yeah.
it. Deep Silver was acquired by Embracer. Yeah, I just off the top of my head, I don't know. Like, I think Xbox has a type, right?
Yeah.
I think they're co-op games. So, what games are coming out in the future that are 4-player co-op that would fit well into the Game Pass paradigm?
Yeah. That's
And
a good question. The release list in May and June and July is actually, in general, in the gaming industry, really small so far. There's really nothing big coming out that has been confirmed so far. Yeah, there is Sniper Elite 5 coming in May, but I don't know whether that's that type of game that really brings in people. And then the next big game is Saints Row in August. There's really nothing coming out in these 3 months. So um, that's why I always say I don't know whether because people like to speculate what's coming to Game Pass. Outside of a Plague Tale in June, I don't think we will get much until the holiday and fall season. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me briefly catch up on the super chats. Drawn TJ sends in another $2 and says Xbox need to show games. Yeah, I think we both agreed there, and he follows up and says, "Do you think Xbox gets Test Drive Unlimited Solar Crown in Game Pass Ultimate Day 1?"
Probably not.
I don't think they have a proper relationship right now. With the studio, if we think about Game Pass releases, it's always good to think about studios that have a close working relationship, and I don't see that there. So, what do you think?
I would say most likely not.
Most likely not.
Yeah. It's tough to say when someone just throws out a random title. And it's just like, what do you think about this? And it's like, I don't know. I mean, like, the list of games that come to Game Pass every month is always, it's always sort of just random, you know?
Yeah.
You don't know what it's going to be. Sometimes it might be a high-profile indie. Sometimes maybe it's just older games coming to the service. It's tough to say. I don't know. I sort of feel like new AAA games, when people ask me, like, oh, what do you think about this? My default answer is no. Because we've only seen, like, 2 examples of that happening. Because I do think publishers are not 100% on board with the idea of launching day 1 in Game Pass. So they sort of avoid it.
Yeah, I agree. All right. It's been a great discussion about the Game Pass roadmap. One other thing I wanted to briefly discuss with you before we move over to the community questions, because we have a couple of great community questions coming in this week. Xbox has revealed a new Kickstart Your Career mentoring program this week. Leaders from across Xbox will serve as kind of mentors on the project that will include virtual coaching sessions, and there's people like the social marketing manager Haley Heller, or the Xbox category manager Mi Koshimitsu, the Everwild executive producer Lucy O'Connor, and other ones from the Coalition and Ninja Theory will serve as mentors for smaller developers or people that want to get started in the gaming industry. And when we think about the ID at Xbox program, where they really support a lot of smaller developers, indie developers, this is a great addition to that, in my opinion. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on this. Have you heard about this?
Yeah, I saw it announced, but I actually don't know too much about it. It sounds like an interesting program. Who's it geared towards? Do you know?
It's for students on universities that study either technical stuff or not, and people that are solo or duo developers that are already in the ID at Xbox program. So
not YouTubers like me and you.
So we could get mentored and make our own game. Yeah, exactly. No, I thought this was an interesting thing because the ID at Xbox program is very successful, and at least on the console side, because of course there's always Steam and the PC, but on consoles, I think ID at Xbox and the support how they help smaller studios and even solo developers to get the games on the system is really probably the best on the market right now. And this is something very interesting and I do hope that a lot of other creative people that want to make a game can learn from that and get the chance to develop and publish their game.
Yeah, that'd be super cool. So it sounds like an interesting initiative. Yeah. We'll see what comes out of it. Could get something really cool. You never know. Maybe nothing comes out of it, right? So
yeah, true. All right, Rand, we are already 80 minutes into the show. Time flies if you have
It sure
great
does.
conversations. Absolutely. So I don't want to keep you too long. That's why I think we can move over to the community questions. All right. The community questions is part of the show where people can write in on Twitter and YouTube. Usually on Wednesdays, I put out those threads where people can ask questions and be a part of the show, even though they can't make it live to the podcast. So we had a lot of questions coming in. I think, Rand, that has to do with you because when they heard Rand is coming on, a lot of questions came in. And the first comes in from SW. That's his username on YouTube. He asks, what's your favorite thing to put on a toast?
I mean, toast. If I had to put, I can't remember the last time I had toast. It's been a while, but some butter is pretty good on toast. If I do make toast, like a grilled cheese sandwich. Other than that, like I don't really toast anything. Like when I have a sandwich, it's sort of just, like I get like some cheese and some like some turkey or something, and maybe I should toast the bread a little bit, but I typically don't. I'm not Jez. I'm not like putting mayo all over the thing here. Or whatever. So
I do love mayo. I have to say I do. I agree with Jez. Mayo is fantastic.
I'm very sort of plain when it comes to food. I'm not out there with food choices, so. So butter would probably be the one thing I do put on toast.
What I do love is salted butter on a toast, and then a little chili flakes.
Chili's good.
That's something I really enjoy. All right, we have other gaming-related questions. We are not going to talk about food all the time. Parksay 1972 writes in and says, "Hey, loving the show so far. Not missed an episode as of yet. Always catch up on the next day. I'm afraid. Can you ask Randall Thor when he is coming out of retirement and starting again?"
Yeah, I get this question a lot. I don't know, like last month or so, I sort of like taken a sabbatical from social media and YouTube, and it's just sometimes I get on social media and I just don't like what I see, so I just it'll be like a week. I go between like weeks before checking it, so I want to, I was thinking about April of making the return. So it's just a matter of like, if there's really something I want to talk about on YouTube. Like, we're still going to do the podcast with Jez, obviously. But, as for videos, maybe this weekend, maybe on Monday. It really just depends on anything super interesting. Like, I thought about, the Gears Coalition, the demo that they showed, but I'm not a tech guy. So like I don't know, it sort of doesn't really fit what people know of me. So I was just kind of like, that's more of like a Boxenberger thing or more of a dealer gaming thing to talk about the tech side of stuff. There really has, I don't know, honestly, there really hasn't been anything super interesting the past like month and a half anyways. So I mean, stay tuned. So that's why you should go to youtube.com/RandallThor19 and subscribe and hit the bell, because eventually this month you'll start seeing more videos. So
fantastic. And if you by the way, if you're looking for Randall Thor's channel and social, it's all in the description of the show notes, so you can find everything there. Very easy for you. Yeah. Worth Fit writes in and says, "Hey, Box and Randall Thor, with Crystal Dynamics having confirmed they are starting to work on Tomb Raider, does this stifle the hopes of the studio being acquired by Microsoft?"
No, because I don't think so. I always imagined when the news was announced that they were working on Perfect Dark. If you go back and listen to that episode of Xbox 2, I said I thought how this all ended up was that Square was going to sell Crystal Dynamics to Xbox alongside the Tomb Raider IP. So to me, if Microsoft to me, you buy it when you buy Crystal, you also buy Tomb Raider with it.
Yeah.
So you would get the IP and the game would be yours anyways. That's the way I've always imagined it working out. So yeah, it really doesn't change anything because we knew that they were working on Tomb Raider. It wasn't really a surprise. It's a surprise that they're working on Unreal Engine 5, but it wasn't a surprise that they were also working on Tomb Raider. So doesn't change anything for me.
Yeah. I mean, it would be kind of weird if you think about, I don't know, EA selling off like one studio of theirs, or Ubisoft selling off one particular studio. And so why should Square Enix do it? But on the other hand, we've seen that Square isn't too happy with that Western developer. Yeah, so I don't think it's completely out of the realm of the possibility, because they have obviously a very close working relationship now with Perfect Dark, and Daryl Gallagher was the studio head at Crystal. So
yeah,
yeah, I think it's really up to Square, because I think Xbox is definitely looking into all of these studios that they have close working relationship with, also like an Asobo or an IO. But at the end, things have to come together. The studio wants to be sold, like an Asobo. I still think they just want to be independent. That's their thing. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think we will hear anything remotely close to an acquisition talk before the Activision Blizzard deal is through. So it will be a while before we hear other infos about acquisitions. Another question comes in from Siki. He asks this: is Avowed going to use Unreal 5? Since Randolph Thor has seen gameplay, what's his thoughts? Can it be as big as Skyrim, a sandbox action RPG? I don't know whether you can actually talk about what you've seen.
I think it's using Unreal Engine 5. Like, I mean, nothing I saw basically said that it was or it wasn't. I saw what Jess showed me. I mean, to me, I think I've mentioned it on my shows. To me, it looked like a more colorful Skyrim. Is at least from the alpha, because this obviously was footage that was older, right? So yeah, it does really seem like basically their goal for Avowed was to make their own Skyrim, just like Outer Worlds was basically their goal was to make their own Fallout, essentially. So yeah, Skyrim action RPG. I'm not sure if you can change it to third person, but what I did saw made me think of a more colorful Skyrim. So
yeah, sweet. Yeah, like I said earlier, I'm super excited for Avowed. Obsidian just hits it with me. The way how they tell the stories, I love the studio. So I'm super excited, and Unreal 5 could definitely be. We have heard multiple developers talk about how easy it is to transport your games over from Unreal 4 to Unreal 5, because for the first time, Unreal engines are actually compatible. That wasn't the case when they moved from Unreal 3 to Unreal 4. They used different script languages and stuff like that. So it wasn't really compatible, and you had to put in a lot of work to transition your games over, and that's this time not the case. They're fully compatible. Of course, if you want to make use of all the features in Unreal 5, you definitely have to put in the work, but in principle, you can just port it over within a couple of weeks and at least have it run under the Unreal 5 engine. So I would be surprised if the game comes out next year in 23 and doesn't run on Unreal 5, but in the already 1 year old Unreal 4 engine then. So yeah. Okay. Harry from Gamers Watch writes in. I've been on their show guesting, and it is a special podcast. They are running, some crazy guys, but they are cool over there. He asks this question: do you think the Coalition will be looking into a fully open world game for the Gears series, or will their new IP be more likely open? Or will their new IP be more than likely open world?
That's interesting because Gears 5 sort of dabbled in open world, right? They stuck their big toe in and they're like, we're gonna kind of do it, but not really.
Open
kind of the
areas?
It was there was really nothing in the giant open areas. There was just a place for you to like drive your sled through, and then like when there were areas of combat, you had to like kind of squeeze through the tight little corridors to get to the combat areas. Is that like the question is, I guess from Coalition's aspect is, what is the next evolution of Gears, right? Campaign, that is, right?
Yeah.
Is it a fully open world game? Because it does seem like a lot of like developers are embracing full open world. That seems to be sort of the thing. Or is it a retreat back to a more linear, horror-filled style game? And then you got to think like, well, they did introduce those power-ups in Hivebusters, right? Mm-hmm. Do you like go more in on like special power-ups for each character?
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting, right? Do they? I don't know. It's kind of the question is like, do they fall back to what made Gears, or do they continue to evolve? The problem I think Gears has facing with an open world is that the characters don't control well in an open world environment. They control well enough in a linear corridor when you're moving from cover to cover.
Yeah.
But when you need to run in a big open world, the roadie run, I think doesn't work very well. So you would need to change certain things about how Gears controls. But then if you change certain things about how Gears controls, is it really even Gears anymore?
Yeah.
So they have a lot of questions. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they're taking their time, because it definitely seems that Microsoft has given their studios a lot of time. We've seen that in the reports from the Initiative game, with the problems with the developers leaving. The reports all said like Microsoft was just like, they really were kind of hands off, and it's like, just whatever, make the game good. We don't care. There's no timetable. And with Gears 5 coming in 2019, which was really short after Gears 4 came in 2016, right?
They 3 years have been they've been 3 years apart. So Gears 4 was 2016. And Gears 5 2019 then, yeah.
Yeah, and you would if they kept that same schedule, we'd have a new Gears game this year.
Exactly.
But we don't, so it'll be interesting. I think super, super interesting to see what their vision is for Gears 6. And whatever their new IP is, would that be a peek at like maybe the future beyond Gears? Like, because there's a part of me that always says, I'm at the point where it's like I've had enough of Gears, right? We've had a Gears game like almost every 3 years since 2006.
Yeah.
And at some point, all good things must come to an end. You run out of stories to tell or what have you, and it's time for something different. So to me, I've always like, man, the Coalition are extremely talented, and I would love to see what they could accomplish without being held to the restrictions that the Gears franchise, presents to them, because Gears has to control a certain way. It has to look a certain way. It has to feel a certain way. And I sort of maybe like their creativity is maybe bottlenecked, because like what would a Gears game be like if it controlled more like Tomb Raider or, some of these other third person action adventure games. So I don't know. It's definitely an interesting concept to think what they could do. Full open world where it's actually open with a change in how you move around the world with maybe power-ups. Is this going to be the end of Kate's story? And if so, do you shelve Gears for a bit and maybe come back to it later on? Do you take the new IP and if it's received well
or something then?
do you then like, okay, make that a new franchise. I mean, there's rumors that there is a Gears collection coming out soon,
Yeah,
maybe even next year.
I would
Especially if the
take
next
that.
Gears 6 is years out. So
Yeah.
I'll be very interested in seeing everything that goes down with the Coalition.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree, except with one point. I don't want Gears to end because I love Gears. I'm a fan.
Things have to end, my friend.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. But um, look when you look at Gears 5 and what they did with these open areas, and then people were complaining like, yeah, well, that's not Gears anymore. I don't want to do side stuff in the Gears. I don't want to do open areas and open world. And the other part complained, well, it's always the same, and now they did something new, and that wasn't good. So it's kind of challenging, and I feel bad for them because no matter what you do when you have such a beloved IP, you will always have both camps. Like one side complaining it's always the same, the other one's saying, yeah, you're going away too much from the formula. But yeah, Gears or the Coalition really carried the Xbox through the last generation. And they are a very well organized and very well structured studio. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put out these games in that cadence. And I thought about this a few weeks ago and I remembered, the studio was actually founded as Black Tusk. And they announced with a CGI trailer an espionage game that kind of reminded me of a Splinter Cell game. And then Microsoft bought the IP, gave it to the studio, and then they rebranded as the Coalition, as this Gears only studio. But now they have shown that they are not just technical masters; they actually can do quite a good story, and that they have that structure to develop proper games. So I truly hope they stay with Gears, but they have that second team that does what you just described, with the creative freedom, to just do something completely new. Maybe they go back to that espionage game, that action thriller game, or whatever that was.
Shanghaiist, I believe it was called.
Yeah, could be. They were on this skyscraper and
Yep.
these.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So definitely gonna be interesting to see where the Coalition goes. But I do hope that these rumors that Jeff Grubb and others and Chess put out, that they are working on a second project, come true, and it's a new IP where they can do whatever they want, because I want to see what they can do if they are not bound to that Gears IP. Definitely. So here we go. Another question comes in from Black Ronin 357. He says, "Hey bro, what do you think of the Unreal 5 reveal, and do you think this will help to speed up the production of the coming next gen games?"
Interesting, because one of the things about the last couple, this gen and last gen, was sequels take a long time to make.
Yeah.
Right? They were like every 2 years during the 360 generation, we get 3 BioShock games and 4 Gears games and 3 Uncharted games and 3 like you got so many games during the 360 gen. But then the Xbox One gen, I don't know if it was because of the engines or because of the graphical demand. So things had to be bigger, better, right? Mm-hmm. And things just took longer to make. Maybe that could help with Unreal Engine 5 being that easy to work with, where if you're working on your own proprietary engine, maybe it's not optimized as such as Unreal would. Epic would be always constantly updating Unreal, and that could help games get made faster. But I think that's just the nature of the beast now. I think games just take a long time to make because they're so complex these days, and so many people working on them, that it's just kind of the nature of the beast now that a AAA game basically is going to take 4 years at this point. That's just kind of sort of seems the norm. So I would like to hope so, but I really realistically think it's probably not going to change too much. So,
Yeah, I have nothing else to add because I fully agree. I just think we are at this point when you look at the visual fidelity and what they do with the sound effects and the animations, and also with the complexity of gameplay mechanics and storytelling and so on, and all these things that just takes up so much time. Game development has become so complex, and it is important to have smart tools that ease your everyday work routine, but in at the end they can only do so much because the ambitions for the games also grow and grow and grow, and with that the development time goes up. So yeah, I agree there, that Rand. Listen, the last question of the day comes in from XBOX Steve, and he says, how on this earth did Rand Al Thor complete Elden Ring so quickly? Any advice or tips? I'm level 122 and 55 hours in, and only just at Raya Lucaria Academy.
jeez, 100 level. So, um,
What level? At what level did you beat the game?
I beat the game at like level 160. At like
Okay.
68 hours or something. I played Elden Ring like I played all my open world games. I basically did everything in an area before sort of progressing the main story. So by the time I got to like the upper areas of the game, I was killing everything in one hit. Bosses I was beating in like 40 seconds. So like I go through a mine or a catacomb and I would only have to spend a few minutes in there because like nothing was killing me and I would be able to beat the boss like easily the first try. I think the most important thing about Elden Ring is make sure you're upgrading your weapons. That's like
Yeah.
super important. A lot of people think that
Weapons
like,
and
oh
ashes. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of people think that if I just put like 10 points in strength or whatever, that's really going to matter. But it really doesn't because you're only actually doing an extra 10 points of damage.
Yeah.
What really matters is the damage your weapon does. So upgrading your weapons with I forget what the item's called, smithing stones, or with the sombering smithing stones is super important because I always made sure my weapons were high as they could possibly go. And if you find an area,
look at what your weapon is scaling with, and
yes,
spend your points there because that gives you the biggest boost at the end. Yeah, if you have.
yeah. So I started the game basically running 2 great swords with heavy armor, and then when I had enough stamina, I switched to 2 colossal swords. And I know some people like to do the katana build, like you said you were doing the Moonveil katana.
Doing that, yeah.
Some people love to do the sorcerer build. I also always was using ashes. I was using the wolf ashes. I had leveled those up, and then when I got the mimic tier. Yeah. I was using the mimic tier, and I was able to level that all the way up. So that was the thing. Like I was exploring so much that my weapons were always as high as I could level them up. And when I got the mimic tier, I had so many of those ghost water plants that I immediately was able to take the mimic tier to like plus 10. And this is before they nerfed the mimic tier. So when I would get into a fight, it was me and my mimic tier, and we would just destroy everything. So, it's really not like about beating it as fast as possible. It's more about like just enjoying yourself, explore everywhere. Like I know you mentioned Boxenberger about like how sometimes you would explore, but then you wouldn't get anything for your build, right? Yeah. And it kind of was like, oh, that sucks. But like mines are always super important to go through because the smithing stones, the smithing stones are all on the walls, right? Yeah. And you grab them. And then the catacombs are good to go through because they're the ghost water plants are on the floor to upgrade your ashes. So those are super important. But just mainly find like a build that you enjoy to play with. Yeah. And upgrade. So
upgrading, is definitely important, and not just the weapon, but also the ashes. Because, like you said, if you have the mimic tier, or I had another ashes that I used a lot. It was the Dragon Knight Carnulf or so. I also upgraded this one. I was always switching in between the two, the mimic tier and this one, but it really makes a difference if you upgrade those. They can carry you a lot in the harder boss fights, also later in the game. No doubt, no doubt. So I want to read the last super chat of the day. Comes in from Tron TJ again, and he says, the creators of WRC games have been in Game Pass. They are creating the new Rest Drive. That's what I was trying to say. I respect your guys' answers. I think Tron TJ is referring to the question.
Yeah, about the next test drive game.
Test drive, yeah. All right.
Yeah. We'll just have to find out. We'll only time will tell if that actually happens. So.
True. All right, Rand. Man, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule for being here.
Thanks for having me. It was a blast finally. Because I believe we've done podcasts together with Mr. Boomstick, but there have been times I think like for your end of the year show where you wanted me to join, but it was just there's a conflict. So it was nice to be able to come on the World of Gaming to talk stuff with you. It sucks that there wasn't something like massively huge, like huge news that we could discuss. But hey, if you guys are enjoying the show, make sure you hit the like button before you leave. Hit the subscribe button because Boxenberger makes incredible videos. Thank you. Make sure you keep on supporting him. He's a great guy. And thank you for having me on.
Thank you so much. It means a lot coming from you. And like I said, guys, if you are interested in Randall Thor and are not subscribed, I highly recommend it. It's all in the description of the show notes, the YouTube channel, Twitter, and so on. Everything there. Rand, again, thanks everyone for being here in chat live with us and listen to us after the fact. Again, you can also find the show on the regular podcast services around the globe. Also want to say a big thank you to all the super chats that came in. Really helps a lot out. And so next week we are going to be back. I have Husk from Gaming Beyond the Box on next week. It's going to be a lot of fun having him on the show. And as always, I want to remind everyone to not forget to game on.